Hi, and welcome back to the series on connection doula support. Again, we're in 4 parts in this series, and this one is about the dirty secrets of the self-help industrial complex and how we got to where we are now with self-help of it all and the fixing of it all. And last time we talked all about fixing. But one thing I want to cover here is that once upon a time, maybe last year or the year before, I started to tally up how much I've spent trying to fix myself and on self-help tools. And that can get really like kind of murky, right? Of like what a self-help tool is. Like it's books, coaches, retreats, but it's like also is my skincare that, and these other things, is my healer that, and so it's like it's a little murky, but all to say, I tried to suss out the difference between things that like were truly helpful and sustaining and weren't in a fixing mindset, and the things I bought just to be like, I need to be fixed. And all the things that I would put under the umbrella of self-help industrial complex. And I think the main thing about that, like to me, like signals now, like that, oh, this is coming from a place of from the self-help industry, is that there's like this promise of elimination. This like these promises of like, I know better than you. I know more than you. I know, I know, I know. And in connection doula support, we go back to a place of like, no, like the each individual we know for ourselves these things, and we've just been so crowded with noise and things to buy and other promises that we lose sight of our own knowing and the possibility in our own knowing. And so I think, yeah, any sort of promise of somebody who promises to know more about you than you know about yourself is a really good sign to just sort of maybe turn the other way. um and, often these things like these promises create the sense of urgency in us that drown out our intuition. Because so often our intuition is trying to tell us, that we're in the wrong relationship or that this change needs to happen or the other thing. And no amount of promising programs or insights or books from others who say they have the answer for themselves. And that's great. And maybe some other answer like resonates a bit with you. But anyone promising these things away just adds more and more to like the chaos cloud tornado that keeps us from realizing and being able to listen to what our intuition says about the change that needs to happen in our life. And I think so often when we're drawn to these things, it's because we're sometimes running away from what our life is truly trying to show us needs to change. And, saying like, oh, it must be this or it must be this, or someone else has the expertise, someone else, we're outsourcing. And instead we can bring inward when we're not so busy like in the following other people's promises, and instead looking at the vows we have to ourselves and what our small still voice is trying to tell us. And when I was living in New York City a couple over 3 years ago, and I was in a relationship that needed to end, and I didn't want to be in the city anymore, even though I like had said I'd always wanted to be in the city, and that was confusing. I was about to move in with that partner, and I just got all of this intuitive hits and things that I should move to Vermont, and I should move to Vermont. And I realized at that point, I was like, I really want to stop getting to the point where my intuition has to scream at me, and instead want to listen to that voice when it's still a small, still voice, because the way that my life has to be upended when it's a screaming voice, as opposed to like the way that I can small course correct a bit by bit when it is a small, still voice, is huge and much less disruptive. And I'm in a place where I really want to have a less disruptive life. I don't want to blow it up anymore. Though my airy self spent most of my 20s doing that. I lived out of 2 backpacks and traveled around the world and lived in 6 different countries and was just constantly changing my life and changing my life. And I love that change. But a lot of it, now that I can look back, was me like running from things while like reading all the books and doing all the things. I was running from the true realities that I needed to sit with and ignoring my intuition and outsourcing all of that knowledge rather than coming inward. And so let's talk about money. I love money. I am somebody who believes that one of the most powerful things we can do is be very resourced. It makes us less dependent on systems that do not love us the way we love each other and can resource our own communities. And so I don't think money is bad. I think that beautiful people do beautiful things and should be a resource in doing them. That said, the self-help industrial complex is worth billions and billions and trillions. And, it can be sticky, right? Because it's like, oh, you follow somebody who has these expertise, you buy their book, and you're following them, and then you buy these other things they have in these supplements, and the supplements aren't really related to your original goals, but it can send us on this, like, again, back to last part of the first part of this conversation, this like fixing. If this industry is always showing you that there's something to fix about yourself, then it's always going to be showing you what you can buy to not fix it. And, I mentioned also in the last conversation that I'm somebody who, lived with disordered eating patterns for many, many, many years. And one helpful thing in coming out of that was the realization that people were making billions of dollars off of sowing some of the seeds of that in me. And I was making them richer by not coming into right relationship with food and nourishment. And so I don't want to make those people billionaires. I want the people around me to be wealthy and have their needs met and things, but I don't want that to go to the top. And I certainly don't want things that feel like suffering or are suffering to be profitable. And that's what this industry does so well and keeps us buying and searching for this invisible end. And those profits are all from keeping us feeling insufficient, like billions and billions and trillions of dollars from that feeling of insufficiency, of fixability. And it becomes sort of like a subscription model of self-improvement because there's like always the next thing, right? Like I'm sure you've watched many times in your life, or maybe your medicine cabinet or credit card history shows just the trends that have come and gone. And like there's always going to be a next thing. But the reality is that you don't always need a next thing. What you need is coming home to yourself, support in doing that, groundedness in what actually works for you, and not this constant look outward of what, more, but the look inward of like, who am I? What do I need? And what is this change asking of me? What is creativity asking of me? And over time, you'll find the supplements if you want them that work for you, or the practices, but the constant consumption of them in the idea of a quick fix isn't going to get us there. And this is, quick fixes and like life hacks are really seductive because again, it's like this 10-minute morning routine and this 5-minute thing and this 10-minute thing and this 8-minute thing and this quick thing and try this and do that. And between meetings, do this. And when you add it all up of all the promises from these hacks, it completely dysregulates us. It takes us out of our lives and puts us into just this sort of like, suddenly your day is being designed by strangers and people you don't know. And you don't even know if that's how you want to spend your time or if it's impactful for you to spend your time that way, because the self-help industrial complex doesn't give us time to stop and think, because you're already behind if you're not doing this and you're behind if you're not doing that. And it's like, we just need to silence that and take a real break from like consuming outward information about what will hacking our way to the life we want, because life isn't built by hacks. Life is built by like true deep practices that nourish and sustain us. And when we outsource to the hack of it all, it just like it gets this surface level, and that surface, it keeps us at the surface level. And so does consuming, and so does reading, and so does all of the things the industry wants to sell us. And then when we go a few layers below that, we come home to ourselves and realize how little we need in that, and how what is being asked down here in the deeper levels that like leads us to think like, oh, this hack could fix it, or this 10-minute thing. But like deeply down, when we actually quiet out all that noise, we can go in and be like, oh, actually this is asking a much deeper question of me that can't be hacked away, or and all those things. And like, don't get me wrong, I love tools. Like I use so many tools. Like I do a lot of breath work and EFT and different energy healing and ceremonies and rituals and things. But those have only become effective once I've gone down to the deep layers and built that trust with myself to be able to witness what's coming up. And when I witness what's coming up, then I can honor it and then know what tools then work, rather than collecting tools for problems and realities I haven't even gone deep enough to find because I've been stuck at the surface where the industry wants us. And as I'm sure you've noticed, in terms of like that surface level we're talking about, it also perpetuates this real like toxic positivity problem and this like love and light culture, and that bypasses real healing. Like real healing doesn't come in 10-minute segments or hacks with any hacks and ice rolling your face and then polar plunging and then sauning. You know, all those things can be beautiful for you if they are your tools, but this sort of idea of love and light doesn't allow us to go down deeper and get into the mess of it all. And the mess is where life is. Like deep down there is like where you find out what's possible in grief. You find the grief that you didn't even know was there, and then or you like realize that this transition needs to happen and you find the strength for the transition deep down. You can't find that at the love and light level. The love and light level, you'll be trying to bypass and bypass and bypass it and find new things and consume new things. Whereas when you're deeply in it and held in it with a doula, you grow that trust with yourself and the truth comes out, and we don't do any more bypassing, and we can get into that real healing of what you deeply need, what your true wisdom is around it, and how to bring those things together. And, you know, I feel a real sadness when I look at like the forcing of like gratitude and like these small hacks for like really deep issues that are not only personal issues, but like structural societal issues that we are never going to get to the bottom of if we can't recognize the grief they bring or the transitions they call for. And so it keeps us distracted from the real work and the real witnessing of life, which is what we came here for, right? Like that's why we're here. And it just becomes all of this bypassing and all of this like well-coded, well decorated on canvas slide things that like sound really good and make these promises. But again, anytime someone is promising to be the expert in your life or promising that this small thing will transform your life should not be trusted, because it's like, it's not the small things up here, it's the deep things down here that bring us home to the practices that keep us well and keep us honest and keep us in integrity with ourselves. And whatever transition you're going through, be it creating something huge and birthing a book, or you are going through a divorce, or your Saturn return, like all of these big life transformations, like if we spiritually bypass our way away from them, we miss the possibility in them. And we miss what they're asking of us, and we miss who we were designed to be on the other side of it. And that's really hard, because when you're designed, you know, when you came here and you have, you know, these missions on earth, and we miss them if we're just self-help industrial complexing our way out and getting tips and tricks and things like that, and buying and consuming so much that life happens without us, and these huge portals of transformation are completely missed. And it's a shame, because the world needs who we are on the other side of that transformation, like deeply, you know, like we need that's what, you know, the world that we need to call into being and create into being right now is a world that is much, much different than the one here. And we can't stay distracted from it. And it's the one that's going to require the skills and the knowing and the patience of having sat with ourselves, been held through transformation, so that we too can hold each other through transformation. When you're held by a doula through transformation, you learn that for yourself, and you then learn how to hold others in that and hold them accountable to what is possible in transformation, rather than sort of shooing it away or staying up here with it. I'm sure we've all heard, you know, numerous stories of harm caused by this toxic positivity, and the amount of like money and things that can be made off of peddling that narrative. And that's not the kind of things we want to put our energetic exchange into, right? Like, you know, those things really truly harm people, whereas the deep truth of what's possible and what transformation wants of us doesn't elicit harm, doesn't elicit bypassing and just sort of this like fake surface level thing that, you know, I think that allows us to run from things like doula care and honesty and tethering to our transformations and to our thresholds has an accountability to it and an inability to run from. And you know, you hear these stories of people who go to like sit with medicines in retreats that aren't their own people's medicines, and they become like almost addicted to the retreats themselves and are at retreat after retreat after retreat after retreat. And again, there's nothing wrong with going to a retreat, but it's like, is it becoming a vice of consuming to keep you at, you know, at a certain level so that you don't have to look deeper? And the thing we always want to be asking is like, what would allow me, what practices would allow me to look deeper, be deeper, live deeper, be in my life? And, you know, on that note, like as an Indigenous person, I watch so much of our deep historical ancestral traditions be like used by the self-help industrial complex too. And I know that this is true for so many folks of different cultures and backgrounds, and watch how those they, in becoming a sellable tidbit, they lose their depth and they lose their meaning. And what connection doula care is bringing us back to what those practices are that have long been in our ancestors or in or other parts of our lives, or have meant something to us for a long time, and how we can come back to those over and over again, so that we're not using, bits and pieces of other people's ceremony, other people's rituals that don't have their roots. It's almost like, a forest without the roots isn't going to be a healthy forest that lives for very long. And like, when we have these teachings and these consumable things that don't have their roots in us and in our knowing and in our lineages, we lose an opportunity to do true healing and to true, care. And something I think about so often is like, so I am 30 and or 31, and in last year I did my coming of age ceremony, which is a year long, very fast and some other things, and sort of did it for myself, having not done that when I actually came of age. But it brought along this grief of thinking about, you know, in um, in traditional indigenous cultures, different thresholds of life all had deep cultural traditions and communal witnessing and holding, and almost like this doula care of honoring a transition in somebody's life, of coming of age, of marriage, of having a child, of loss, of grief. All of these huge transitions were really witnessed and held and loved, and art was made around them and ceremony was held around them. And that's key. And how can we now hold ourselves and be held in a way by a doula to bring that back, and to, in our own way, not taking other people's traditions, but looking at traditions of honoring life's thresholds and being held in them, and how crucial that has been to humans for our whole lives. And of course is crucial now. We've just lost the tethering to it, and we can get it back, and we have to get it back. And there's this role of community in holding transformation, right? And all of those rituals and ceremony that requires people and holding. And so my big dream for this type of doula care is like, yes, that I provide the doula care, and then in being witnessed in that way, other folks can also provide that doula care and doula each other. And witness each other and hold transformation as a sacred thing, as a thing of possibility, as a thing of potentiality, as a thing of like birth in so many forms. Because we have to get back to that, because in that way we honor life. And when we honor life, again, we consume less, we are more grounded, we are more attentive to those around us, we build deep communal relationships, we are less reliant on systems that oppress us. Like, everything becomes more possible when we have that sovereignty of having been held and knowing how to hold each other, and having that really beautiful community wraparound, and adding ritual and ceremony and witnessing into it, versus making it this like individualized work where it's like, you find the book, you find this, you find that, it sort of, back to the conversation we had around the fixing myth of being able to be fixed. It sort of becomes very individualized in the self-help industrial complex of, it becomes so self-centered of like, me, I need to fix this, and I need to fix this, and I need to do this, and I need to buy this, and I need to do this, and da 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 da, and all of this consumption and individualization. Whereas with doula care, that becomes communal care, we can do this in a collective way, and we learn to all hold ourselves and hold each other. And it gets us away from like pathologizing normal human experiences, and instead it allows us just to be in them and ask them what they would have us know, and ask them what's possible on the other side of them, rather than like basically seeing a script of like, someone else got this divorce, then these are the books I should read, and this is the milestone I should meet in 3 months from now, in 6 months. And instead it's like, if we take away the rules and the hacks and things of the self-help industrial complex, we can stop that pathologizing, and instead just ask change, ask transformation, ask threshold, ask creativity. What would you have me know? What do you want from me? And allowing them to be a normal part of a human experience that there's nothing to buy to fix. It's just to be in and to sit in and to be held in. And that's so crucial. That part of being held in and witnessed in is so key. And that's so much of what doula care is witnessing in transformation. And then, of course, this billion and billion and billions and billions of dollars industry wants us to be isolated, because it makes everything harder and makes us feel more lonely. And we feel more lonely, we're more likely to consume or believe other people's promises and things like that. But when we're held in community, when we're held by a doula, we're held by loved ones, and we're not isolated. They mirror things back to us that no outside expert or book could ever do, but it's that individualized support of what's possible and what transformation is asking of us. And so, it's not, you are not failing at self-help. Self-help as it's currently constructed is failing you and trying to get you to hack your way into so many things. And you are a beautiful chunk of nature that is fundamentally unhackable. There's nothing that needs to be hacked about you. But there is this older, more human, more wise way of holding each other, witnessing each other, honoring thresholds in community with ritual, with creativity. And that all starts with that understanding that there's no problem. There was never a problem. There's these scripts that we have running all of the time about what things should be and things like that. And instead, bringing us home to, wow, like there is no problem. I just get to be how can I transform, and how can that transformation serve me and the world and community that I'm a part of? So yeah, you are not the problem. Self-help is the problem. There's no problem with you. Um, Maybe we've just been very effectively sold things that are there to perpetuate problems rather than fix them. And so I will be back in the next conversation to talk about my journey from a sort of self-fixing addict and to a doula, really doula, across all of life thresholds. So thank you and take care of yourself. And I'm sending you rest and nourishment and care, and look forward to our next conversation.